But you're talking about this other dynamic that's going on that is very much, it seems to me, symptomatic of this problem, where those funds have to go somewhere, and they're not going necessarily into eggs and groceries, but they are going into stocks, into Bitcoin, into fixed real estate and fine art and things like that.
Yeah.
How does that work? I mean, why is one happening and not the other? And are we talking about the wrong thing if we're focusing on consumer inflation?
Well, yeah. First of all, there are two types of inflation. There's the supply-demand inflation, when demand is strong enough and it presses up against capacity, like you don't have enough labor, unemployment rates are low, and capacity is low, and then prices go up, and there's that kind of inflation. And then there's a monetary inflation, which comes from the supply of debt being too much so that they produce more of the money, and the holders of those financial assets, particularly bonds, because bonds is just a promise to receive money that the central bank can print, the holders of that then go into those other things. And then what happens is then you just have to follow the money. So you see who gets the money. And then when they get the money, you see what they do with that money. So let's say if you change who gets the money now, because we're going to change that, taxes will change that, other things will change that. That goes then to those other people. So the inflation, the big inflations, the ones that are really most important are not the ones of the supply and the demand. They are the ones like that which followed 1971, my example. Okay, there's not enough money. You put it down, you devalue. In other words, you sever the link. And then with that, then there's a monetary inflation. You go into those other things, and then you have that. So the risk, let's say there's two risks. We will have a hell of a lot of demand because we put all that money in. Cash is all over the place. And even investments, all the investments go up because of so much cash. And how do you find a good investment? But there's so much money, and it'll change the amount that is in the hands of individuals and so on. And so now it's in cash, and that'll move on because cash is trash. I mean, I'd say that because it'll have that negative real return. So we're going to the real risk. You'll experience more inflation. Right now, a lot of it is in cash, and there'll be a lot more money being produced. But you'll experience that more in that kind of inflation. Things will go up. You could see inflation in houses, inflation in many things is going up, and then you'll start to see probably some labor inflation. If you start to see labor inflation and so on, it'll be a different kind of inflation though. It'll be because we're in a more digital society, there won't be, those things can be produced. That supply of digitalization can be produced without the capacity constraint. But the big monetary inflation is the thing. Where do I store my wealth? Okay, because what happens to the markets is then when you go to those other things, let's say you go to stocks, you go to real estate, you go to other things because they're getting out of that. As those prices rise, like a bond, their future expected returns go down. And as they come closer to the interest rate, so now you've got whatever the interest rates are, it depends on the country, but it comes down, then there's no longer the incentive to buy those things, and you could have trouble. And it becomes very difficult to tighten monetary policy because the whole thing falls apart. Everything's interest rate sensitive. And so the central bank has got to then print that. Then you have negative real returns in stocks and other assets like we did in the 70s, but the nominal return goes up. That pattern has happened over and over. And I'm just trying to describe the mechanics of it.